I'm Elizabeth and I'm back from my holiday. If I seem somewhat less enthusiastic about that, it's because I had such a great day on my holiday and I really didn't want to go home. But just a few more days, but you know, back to the daily grind and all that. So as you already know, because you read the title of this video, this is a book haul and it's a big one. I was in London for 17 days and I honestly thought I was being fairly restrictive with my book buying this time around, because apart from the one day I went on a bookshop crawl with Silja and Mark Nash and another friend from Norway, I didn't really go out intentionally book shopping any day. But it turns out that if you just happen to come across bookshops wherever you go and you go in to have a browse, and we all know it's illegal for a booktuber to leave a bookshop without buying a book. I mean, it accumulates. So my final tally on this trip ended up with 31 books, which I managed to stuff in my suitcase, and it was 200 grams below the allowed airline weight. So I was happy with that. I got it all home. And yeah, I'm just gonna cram them all into this one video, and it will be however long it needs to be to fit all of them. And yeah, I'm also gonna include the 5 books I have already hauled because I'm a completionist, and I need all of the books I acquired to be in this one video. And yeah, I'm gonna tell you where I bought them, why I bought them. I'm gonna leave a list of all the books down below, so if you want to find out more about them, you can Google them. I'm not gonna go into lengthy details about what each book is about. But before I get started on my London haul, this was waiting for me in my mailbox when I got home. It's called Sommertid or Summertime by Hilde Rød Larsen. It's an unsolicited review copy sent to me by Aske, Norwegian publisher. I have absolutely no idea what it's about, and that's the only book in this haul that I can say that for, because the rest is painstakingly curated, chosen and paid for by yours truly. So here we go. I'm gonna try to do this in the order I bought them, if I can remember correctly. So I know the first book I bought was Cities of the Classical World by Colin McEvedy, edited by Douglas S. Oles. This is a book which just lists a bunch of ancient cities, I think 120 cities, talks a little bit about their history, about the population assumed to have lived there, and it includes maps. So I have read like 30 pages of this. This is going to be a book I'm dipping in and out of for a long time, because I'm just not in the mood for reading like about 120 cities at once, but like 2 or 3 a day sounds fine to me. Then the next bookshop I went to was Daunt Books at Hampstead Heath, because I was having a park day, not planning on buying any books, and then when I went to the overground station to go home that day, turns out there was a Daunt bookshop right across the street, and of course I had to go in, and I bought Motherhood by Sheila Heti and Kudos by Rachel Cusk, both books which I had planned to buy on this trip anyway, so I thought I might as well do it sooner rather than later. And I have already read both of these and talked about both of them, so I'm gonna leave it at that. And then of course I went to Cambridge, and at the Cambridge University Press bookshop I bought The Language Myth by Vyvyan Evans, which I think is about debunking the idea made famous by Noam Chomsky that language is somehow innate in humans. So I'm very much looking forward to reading that one. And then at Waterstones in Cambridge I bought Near to the Wild Heart by Clarice Lispector, because both Mark Nash and Silja has been raving about her. Clarice Lispector is definitely a woman, but they've been raving about her this year, and I very much want to read her, and this is her debut novel, and I decided that was a good place to start. So those were the books I have also already showed you. So I'm dragging the next pile here. So I had another park day in Regent's Park, where I finished off the book I was currently reading, which was Landlocked by Doris Lessing, and I needed something else to read, and I walked to Camden and I found The Swan in the Evening by Rosamund Lehman. This is a memoir, and I don't really know much about her or this book, but I know that Celia bought this book when we were in London in February, and I got curious about it when I looked through her pile, and so this time I bought it, and I even bought it in the same bookshop as she did. I did start it that day while eating dinner, so I read like 25 pages and then I started something else, so I'll get back to this shortly. But so far the little part I have read was about childhood memories, and I mean, I have to admit, when reading memoirs I kind of read quickly past the childhood memories, and because I'm just more interested in the adult stuff. But yeah, then next bookshop I went to was a book shopping day. I mean, I did go to that on purpose. It was called Hurlingham Books. It's in Fulham, and it was this glorious bookshop where the windows are just jam-packed with paperbacks, and it's a really tiny shop, but it's just books, books, books everywhere you look. You can hardly walk in there because it's so full of books. And I love bookshops like that, charming second-hand bookshops, when you never know what you're gonna find. And the person who worked there also told me that they have a massive warehouse of books that you can gain access to by making an appointment. So that might be something to do on a future trip, I don't know. But yeah, I got 3 books in that bookshop, first of which was Madame de Treymes by Edith Wharton. I have only read one book by Edith Wharton so far, and that was The Age of Innocence. I really liked it, and since then I've been sort of hoarding her other books, and I have gotten many of them in these green Virago editions. So when I saw this, I just scooped it up to fit into that shelf space. Then I also got An Experiment in Love by Hilary Mantel, because I apparently am also hoarding her books after having loved the Thomas Cromwell novels so much. Really looking forward to the next one in March next year. But maybe I should read some of her other books in anticipation, as well as rereading the first 2 of the Cromwell novels, of course. That will happen before March. Then the last one I picked up there was Regeneration by Pat Barker. Never read Pat Barker, but I've heard good things about this. It won the Man Booker Prize in 1995. The cover tells me this is a World War I novel, and yeah, it intrigued me. Don't have anything else to say. Then on the same day I sort of went back, and I sort of maybe have gotten on the wrong underground from where I was planning to go, but it's okay. I ended up in Notting Hill, and then I sort of just fell into the Waterstones shop there, and there I got Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, which is a book I've been meaning to read for a long time. When I was in London in February, I bought a short story collection by her, which I now have read, and I really, really liked it. So, I mean, I'm ready for a full-length novel, and this is the one that was on the shelf. Yeah, and that ended like my first week of book shopping when I was all alone, and yeah, as I said, I felt fairly restrained, but that's still a big pile of books. And then on the Wednesday, my friend Monica arrived from Norway, met her for dinner that evening, and on Thursday we met up in Notting Hill to have a stroll, and there's a second-hand bookshop that I don't really know the name of. I looked at like the receipt for this book, and it just simply says books in Pembridge Road, so maybe the bookshop is just called Books. Anyway, the book I got was The Seventh Function of Language by Binet. This is a book I have been picking up and putting down in bookshops for a bit over a year now, I think. First started in Dublin on me and Celia's book trip last year, and I've been umming and ahhing ever since, because I'm very intrigued by the idea of this telling a fictional account of the death of Roland Barthes, and that this plot is built around ideas around language, about him having found the seventh function of language, and that he was murdered because of it. And then the thing that's putting me off is that it does sound like a crime fiction, and I'm not big on crime fiction, but I mean, after wanting to read it or being curious for so long, when I saw this in a second-hand bookshop for £3, I mean, I couldn't pass it up anymore. So it went home with me. I realized I have some chronological issues here, but no matter. The day before I met Monica, I was at Daunt Books and I bought 3 books there. One of them is A Small Place by Jamaica, Kincaid. This is basically an essay. It's a very short book. It was originally written as a letter to her editor, but he wanted to publish it in the New York Times. He got sacked just before it was supposed to be published, and the new editor said it was too angry to be published there, and instead it ended up being published as a book. And this is a new release, which includes a new foreword by the author herself, written in 2018. I read this yesterday. It was a very powerful book. I'm going to talk more about this in my weekly reading video that hopefully will be up tomorrow. Then I also bought At the Pond, Swimming at the Hampstead's Ladies' Pond. I mean, this book was everywhere I went in London this year. I think just about every bookshop had it displayed. And after I had actually gone swimming in the Ladies' Pond at Hampstead Heath, I thought, well, I might as well read about it. I really love swimming, and it might be interesting to read what some other women have written about swimming as well. So this also went home with me. And then the last book I bought there on that day was The Years by Annie Ernaux. This is another one I had decided prior to going that I wanted to buy, because everything I've heard about it yells to me that this is a me book. So this is one I'm going to read soon, I hope. I'm not quite sure how my reading time is gonna look for the foreseeable future, but I'm hopefully getting to that soon. Then, my next pile. These are the books I bought on the Friday when I went on a bookshop crawl with Celia, Mark and Monica, and yeah, 9 books on that day, so that's like the most massive book shopping day of the trip. First we went to Judd Books, and I bought 2 books there. It's a lovely second-hand bookshop. Really enjoy it. And I got Feebleminded by Ariana Harwicz, which was another book that I wanted to find on my trip. I had also looked for it in other bookshops and not found it. Just very happy to find it there for a reasonable price. Even more happy now that I have actually read it and discovered I didn't very much like it. More about that in the video tomorrow. And then I also got It's Not an All-Night Fair by Pramoedya Ananta Toer, which is an Indonesian author. This is, I don't know, a short story or a novella. It's very short, at least. I bought a book by him when I was in London in February as well, because I have read and really loved The Brewer Quartet, written by him. And this is blurbed as eloquent and sensual as James Baldwin, as hip and smart and bleak and dark as Dashiell Hammett by Los Angeles Times, which make it sound even more interesting, but to me it's mostly because I have already read and loved him that I want to read more. And then we went on to Gaze the Word, where I actually went out of a bookshop without buying a book. That didn't happen very often. Mostly it was because the bookshop was very crowded that day, and I just felt claustrophobic and needed to get out. It is a really great bookshop, and I have bought books there before, but you know, sometimes you just need to get away from all of the people. But yeah. And then the next bookshop we went to was Scoob Books, which is another second-hand bookshop that I really like and always visit when I'm in London. I got 2 books. I got The Vanishing Princess by Jenny Diskey, which is a short story collection. I had at this point only read one Jenny Diskey before, which was Ingratitude, a memoir she wrote on her deathbed. I have since. I bought another book by her in February, which was another non-fiction, and then there's going to be another one later in this pile, which is also non-fiction. I have now read the other one I bought, but yeah, I'm really intrigued to get into her fiction as well, because I really like her non-fiction and I'm curious about this, and I haven't been reading a lot of short stories lately, so I should get on to that. And the other book I bought at Scoob was The Prime of Life by Simone de Beauvoir. This is the second book in her quartet of autobiographies, so now I have the second and the third volume. Still like the first one, so I can't start them yet, and I'm also lacking the fourth one. I did see the first one in new editions in several bookshops, but it was one of those Penguin modern classics, and I find the print in a lot of those books to be really bad. They're sort of just bleaching out onto the page, and I can't stand reading that, so I'm going to hold out to find an edition that I actually find readable. And then I will get into these at some point in the future. Then we went on from there to the London Review Bookshop, which is another favourite of mine, both because they have a very, very good curated selection of books. They also have a very good selection of cakes, which we didn't eat on this day, but I went back a different day to have lunch. But yeah, I bought 2 books there. One of them is Notes from the Fog Stories by Ben Marquis. I know Ben Marquis is one of Mark Nash's favourite novelists, and I read on his recommendation The Flame Alphabet earlier this year, and that was a book that really intrigued me, and I want to read more by Ben Marquis. So when I was there with Mark, I just asked him, out of these 3 on the shelves, which one would you recommend? And he said that this was the strongest collection of stories, so I bought this one. And I have to say, I find this cover slightly disturbing. I feel very uncomfortable looking at it. And then I got another book that was a complete random pick for me, a book I hadn't heard of before. It's The Dictionary of Animal Languages by Heidi Sopinka. I was drawn to the title. Anything that deals with language will have me pick it up, but then I read the blurb on the back and it sounds like such a me book that I just had to buy it. I'm not going to read the entire blurb, just the last sentence of it. It says, inspired by the life of surrealist artist Leonora Carrington, this is a thrillingly elegant yet raw evocation of a woman clawing her way to a creative life. And I'm always for reading about people clawing their way to a creative life. So that had to come home with me as well. And then our last stop of the day was Foyles at Charing Cross Road, where I got 3 books. The first of which is How Words Kill, You Are Not Human by Simon Lancaster. This is a book about metaphors and how metaphors are used to dehumanize people and how you are able to treat them as something other than human because you have been so accustomed to talking about them in other ways, like for instance calling people vermin. And this feels like such an important book to read. It feels sadly very timely to read this, and yeah, very intrigued to read this. Then another book from there is If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin, because Giovanni's Room is my favorite read of the year so far, and I wanted to read more Baldwin. I really don't like this movie tie-in cover, but it had crisp lettering inside as opposed to the other edition, which had these blurry letters, and I mean, I'll choose readable over beautiful cover any day. And then the last book I bought there was After Atlas by Emma Newman, because I had brought Planetfall with me from home as a book I was currently reading when I left home. I finished it on the first day I was in London. I loved it and I wanted more, so I bought After Atlas, which I have also already finished and will be talking about tomorrow. Yeah, that was the end of that day. And then the day after, me and Silja and Monica basically had a day in the park and enjoyed ourselves, but on the way home we kind of stumbled onto Daunt books again, and I wasn't going to buy any books because I had already, like at that point, bought 5 books at Daunt Books, so it would be okay to leave the bookshop without buying anything. And then I saw Skating to Antarctica by Jenny Diskey, which is a book that was mentioned several times in Gratitude, which I read 2 years ago. And I've been wanting to read it ever since. I have never seen it in a bookshop, so of course I just had to buy it. This is another one I have already read, and more about that tomorrow. Okay, on to the last pile I have here next to my camera. Yeah, still while Silja was with me, we went to Forbidden Planet because she wanted to look for comics, and I'm not very hard to convince to go to Forbidden Planet, let's face it. I got 2 books. I got The Rosewater Insurrection by Tade Thompson, which is the sequel to Rosewater, which I actually read when I was in London in February. Really liked it. It wasn't perfect, it had some flaws, but I mean, I did certainly like it enough that I want to read the sequel. It's about an alien invasion, sort of, to Earth. It's not your standard kind of invasion, and the aliens have made roots in Nigeria, and this follows up from the previous book, but I think where the previous novel followed one particular man, this is gonna take a bit of a broader view to the invasion. I don't have a better word for it, apparently. Then the other book I bought was Hexarchate Stories by Yoon-Ha Lee, which is, I think, a collection of short stories set in the universe of the Machineries of Empire trilogy that I have read and absolutely loved. So, I mean, I want to read these. What else can I say? Then I was alone again, and I thought I was bookshopped out, but there's no such thing, we all know that. So I went back to South Kensington Books, which was the first bookshop I went to, because on my first day I saw a book I wanted to buy. I didn't buy it because I thought I would see it again. I didn't see it in any of the other bookshops I went to, so I had to go back to buy it. It's Notes of a Crocodile by Ki Miao Jin. This is a book that was recommended to me by Michael from Knowledge Lost, and I mean, he was pestering me on Instagram to buy it, so what could a poor person do? I just had to go back to buy it, didn't I? Apparently this is a Chinese cult classic, and I'll report back to you when I've actually read it. And you know, when I was gonna pay I just randomly also picked up Women and Power, a Manifesto by Mary Beard, because it was lying there on a pile on the counter and it looked so shiny, and who wouldn't want to read about women in power? I mean, apparently marketing tricks works on me. And yeah, that was the end of my book of shopping. I was certain, and I was also wrong, because I had the whole day left and I was going to spend it in the park, which I did, but then I thought, well, I have finished Atlas Alone now. I should really get Before Mars. So I went to Foyles and I bought this, and I thought, well, we passed, without going in, a Waterstones in Gower Street when I and Celia and Monica were walking to get something to eat. On the first day Celia was there, and I thought, I have never seen that shop, but I've heard it's a beautiful one. So I went back and I went in, and it certainly is a beautiful one. It's got lots of nooks and crannies and artwork and a record store in the basement and a cafe, and yeah, really liked it. And I mean, I couldn't leave without buying books, you know, the illegal stuff, illegal to walk out. Whatever, the rules you make for yourself, eh? So I got Women Talking by Miriam Towles. Yeah, is that how it's pronounced? Whatever. Mainly because Sarah at Hardcover Hearts was raving about this and made me curious. And then, I mean, after I had sort of decided that it could wait, I wasn't going to buy it now. I saw Mark Nash mention it in a video as well, and that sort of pushed me over the edge. So let's see what I think about that. And then, on a whim, I also got Sleepless Nights by Elizabeth Hardwick. This is another book that was prominently displayed several places that I was going, and eventually I just caved and bought it. I also read the first few pages, and seemed to like them. So that was my actual final purchase. So yeah, that was my London book haul. 31 books. Let's see how long it takes me to get even halfway through that. Well, I have actually read 6 of them already, so I feel that's a good start. But now I'm going back to work, and it's gonna be a hectic few months, so we'll see how much reading I'll get done at all in the near future. But I think I'm gonna stick with these books for a while and try to avoid buying new ones for at least a few months. Let's see how I do with that. Have you read any of these? Anything you think I should prioritize? Please tell me in the comments below, and I hope you enjoyed this video of massive consumerism, and I will see you hopefully tomorrow with my weekly reading wrap up. Until then, bye bye.